Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Coach the Coach Radio. Brought to you by the Business RadioX Ambassador Program, the no-cost business development strategy for coaches who want to spend more time serving local business clients and less time selling them. Go to brxambassador.com to learn more. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Coach the Coach Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today we have with us Stephen Krempl with Winning in the Work World. Welcome, Stephen.
Hey, thanks for having me, Lee. Great to be on the show.
Well, I'm excited to learn what you're up to. Tell us a little bit about Winning in the Work World. Who you serving and how do you do it?
Well, Lee, Winning in the Work World, as the title suggests, we help individuals either entering the workforce or those who've been in the organization to help to get a little bit more visible and stand out, especially to their senior management. So it's all the people who are working, though.
So how did you get in this line of work? What was the catalyst for your business?
Well, actually, it's kind of interesting. I've had a pretty long corporate career in, 4 Fortune 500 companies, actually the more 4 Fortune 200 companies. And then at the end, I decided, what am I going to do? And the reason I actually found was I saw many of my colleagues being bypassed for promotion or getting that choice project, not because they were not smart, hardworking people, but, they just were not visible enough to senior management. And you know how important that is when you need to be picked by them, right? So
now, so in your career, I guess you were picked more times than your colleagues?
Well, let's put it this way, though. I think I understood the rules of the game, which is one of the techniques that we teach people. You have to figure out the rules of the game, and then you have to decide in those 5 situations that the senior management either see or hear you that you need to be seen or heard, though, right? You can be at the meeting, but if you're the quietest one or the one that doesn't say anything, then you might just be overlooked. So it's a little bit of a strategy, Lee.
So when did you realize that there was more to kind of moving up the corporate ladder than just doing good work?
Well, can I share a story, Lee? So this happened to me way back in my first job. The regional HR guy came to me and said, hey, Krempl, I'm going on a 2-week regional trip. I want you to review all our processes and tell me what's wrong and missing. And when I come back, you let me know. I'm going, wow, this is my chance because I'm really good at pointing out mistakes and finding faults. So the guy comes back and he says, hey, Krempl, come on to my room and tell me what's wrong. So I went to his room and said, Jason, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is missing, this is missing. And I don't know who was in my position before I came in, but that person wasn't obviously doing their job. He paused for about 2 seconds, then he said, I was the person that was in that position. And I go, oops, I just put my foot in my mouth, right? And then he said this, which changed my life forever. He said, Krempl, just remember this, though. If there's a problem or something going on that is not right in the organization, there's probably somebody in the room, i.e. the most senior person, that either has not fixed the problem or they are the ones that caused the problem. So what you should have told me was this. He says, all you should have said was, Jason, if we just tweak this, and this process, and maybe improve this and this process, and added this one thing, our organization would be so much better. And I would have said, great job, please carry on. And then it dawned on me that most senior people don't want to hear what's wrong. They want to hear what you're going to do to make it right. And it switched my total, from a communication standpoint, one of the aspects is going from negative to positive, right?
Now, but to me, it's also kind of requiring of yourself to think more like an owner than an employee. Try to get to the heart of the problem and solve it, not just to kind of be a cog in the machine and just go along with a broken machine.
That's right. Don't tell me the problem. Well, you can raise the problem, but the ones that get more visible are the ones that can raise the problem, maybe provide a solution or provide some alternatives that, that senior management should consider to get it done or fixed or resolved or improved or, any one of those things though. And it's really, really important to have that though.
Now, how do you counsel the individual that feels like they're doing good work and that there's somebody that's doing lesser work, but they're just able to either kind of, I don't want to say steal the work or maybe steal the credit or kind of, pretend like they're doing the work in front of senior management, but they're really not? Yeah.
So, this is not a fair world, Lee, as we all know. And some people, I come across some of those in my career as well, right? However, they understand the rules of the game, though. That there are a couple of things that you have to consider. Firstly is there's two numbers that we talk about all the time. It's called 95 and 5. And that's why the book is called the 5% zone, right? So 95% of the time, you need to be yourself. However, in the 5% times, and the 5% times we defined as being in the presence of people 2 levels and above in the organization. How you act in the 95 is not the same as how you act in the 5%. So when you are in the presence of the person who is, 2 levels above you, so your boss's boss or your supervisor's supervisor, you need to really pay attention and figure out what they are looking for and give it to them. And most people go, well, Stephen, that's acting and that's not being true to myself, right? However, that's where you shoot yourself in the foot, though, because in a corporation, people act slightly differently at different times, though. And then most people go, well, that's not being authentic. And then I give them this example, Lee. I say, look, you change all the time, though. When you are in the office, you act one way. When you go out drinking with your old college or university buddies, you act totally different. And if you were married and you went to your mother-in-law's house, you act totally different. And if you went to the game and your team has just scored, you act different. And if you were a person of worship, you act different if you went to that place of worship. So we know how to change, but somehow in the organization, people go, well, you see, I'm not like that. I'll let my work speak for itself. And then they miss out on the opportunity because some of them don't get to meet their bosses or their boss's boss very often, right? So that, and unfortunately, that's the truth, and I'm kind of telling it like it is, Lee.
Now, what do you tell to the person, especially we're dealing with a lot of conversation about diversity and inclusion nowadays. Yes. How do you kind of counsel the folks that just maybe for a lot of people, there is that 5% time they're in front of your boss's boss, but for some people, it might be a 1% or a 0.5% time that they're in front of that person.
So totally, right? So, then it's even more important to focus on that 0.5% or 1% because people kind of give you credence. So I do a lot of work with diversity groups. I come from a diverse background myself, so I know exactly the situation. And your opportunity as a diverse person or a person of diversity is actually better if you say, let's say you're in a 1% meeting and you asked a great question when you ordinarily would have kept quiet, you stand out even more. In fact, it's no more 1x, I call it a 3x, right? Because you now have people go, wow, this Stephen guy, he actually, thinks pretty clearly though. I'm looking for somebody now. Whom do I remember? I remember Stephen because he actually asked a great question, and that's probably the only thing he said or had opportunity to say in that meeting. So for those people who are 0.5% or 1% time, it's even more importantly.
So now let's walk through a scenario like that. Okay, so now I know I'm maybe a person of color. I'm in one of these small subsets. There's not a lot of me in this in the office. And I'm getting invited to one of those meetings. So I know a week ahead I'm going to be there, and there's going to be, all the muckety-mucks are going to be there and me. Yep. And so what am I doing to prepare number one, what am I doing to prepare to kind of maximize my opportunity? Because I'm going to think strategically now that I read your book. So I'm thinking strategically. So now what do I do? What homework am I doing, number one? And number two, after the meeting, what kind of follow-up am I doing to kind of lock in that to keep me top of mind?
Okay, very good. You're brilliant, Lee. So at the meeting, there are only 3 things that I tell people you can do. There are only 3. So those who are listening, take this down. Number one, you're either making a point. So you're either articulating a point of view. That means you're saying something, right? Number 2, you ask a question. That's the second thing you can do. Or number 3, you summarize them. So you're summarizing at the end because the leader will say, any question or comments. So if you're not familiar with the topic, then I suggest maybe you don't you add a point of view because you may be out of your depths, right? But you could ask a question, though. But that presumes you have a great question that you've already thought through and brought to the meeting because you know the topic of the meeting. Or if the worst thing happens, Lee, and you don't articulate a point of view, you don't ask a question, and then right at the end, you know is the opportunity. And when the leader says, any question or comments, you put up your hand, and you don't even have to say anything. All you have to do is say, Lee brought up a great point about ABC, and Stephen over there brought up a great point about X, Y, and Z. I think I like Lee's point, and I'm going to tell my peers to do exactly what Lee says. All I did was repeat what Lee and Stephen said, though. But it sounded like I'm participating and carrying that information and doing something with it.
Now, when it comes to asking a question, I'm sure that a lot of folks that are in that position are afraid of asking a question that might be considered dumb or obvious or to kind of show that maybe they aren't knowledgeable and they should have known this. Yep.
Well, there are a couple of rules when, if you read the book as well, there are a couple of rules around asking questions. Firstly, don't ask what we call a negative or trapping question. And that is, Lee, you brought up this particular situation, but we don't think it's really good. So what are you going to do about it? So that's trapping you, right? No leader wants to do that. They will answer the question, but their memory of you is you're asking a negative and a challenging question. We say that any question can be asked either neutrally or positively. And most people just don't know how to do that because they think of the issue in their head and it comes straight out their mouth, right? So you can say, nobody agrees with the new strategy. And so what are we going to do about it, right? So that's obviously a negative question. Or you could rephrase something like that and say, how do we gain the support of all our employees for our new strategy? The answer is exactly the same, Lee, but the impression of the person asking the question, totally different.
But that requires kind of pre-planning and kind of doing your homework. You can't just show up and think you're going to be able to wing it on the spot. These meetings are too rare, and you got to kind of get the most out of them. So you can't just go in there and think you're going to wing this.
You hit the nail on the head. We have another concept, of course, called preparation, right? Most senior leaders prepare like mad, though. They just don't tell you, though, right? So I'll give you an example, though. I flew down from Seattle to Santa Clara to have one of my clients. He said, hey, Stephen, can you come and help me out? I have a 10-minute presentation to my CEO, and I need some of your help. I spent 4.5 hours with him on his 10-minute presentation, right? But do you think that person's going to stand up in front of his CEO and say, I've been practicing with Stephen for 4.5 hours, and I'd like to make my presentation? No, he's going to go up. He's going to stand up, deliver his presentation with a bang, and people are going to go, wow, that guy's a great communicator. He just had 4.5 hours practice with me. They don't tell you, though. So most senior leaders, for those people who are listening, if you have a 1% meeting, 5% or 0.5% meeting, preparation is key, though. And especially if you know there are only 3 things you can do, right?
Well, and it's a great point that when something looks easy, doesn't mean it was easy.
Yeah.
There was a lot of
simple is not easy and easy is not simple, right?
right. There was a lot of work to make it look easy. There was a lot of sweat and tears to make it look easy, and people don't appreciate it. They think like, oh, that's a natural communicator. He's just good on his feet.
I was talking to one of the guys who was interviewing me on a podcast, and then he said, we were doing a show, and people always ask him, Jason, how come you're so comfortable in front of a camera? Though he says, between January of 2020 and April, I've already done 2,000, build mini cast, in that 4-month period though. I'm a lot better at 2,000 than I was at number one, though, right? And people don't realize that, right? They see you doing the 2,000th one, right? But they never saw your number 1 to 10 or whatever you did in the beginning. People get more comfortable, and then they become more confident, right? And then that shows when you are, prepared, though.
So now in your work of coaching people and helping them with these kind of skills that you've gained over the years, how has kind of being an entrepreneur and running your own show been different for you or challenging for you as opposed to kind of climbing the corporate ladder?
Well, as you know, for all entrepreneurs, it depends what your goal is, right? In fact, probably the goals are very similar. You want to increase your business. You want to be visible in your area, your industry or your whomever your target audience you're playing with. And you have to be seen as somebody who's really good or an authority in that area, though. The same skills apply, though. If I talk about visibility, yes, we talked about corporate visibility. Are you visible in your community or your target audience that you do, right? Do you communicate? How do you communicate to your audience, though? Are you the person that is able to be clear and concise with their messaging, or are you the person that rambles on and on? So many parallels are the same, except that if you are an entrepreneur, you may not have what I call the trappings or the infrastructure that if you were a leader in an organization, you would have. So, I don't have my team of 30 people. You could, as an entrepreneur, if you have a big business and that's what you want, right? But most entrepreneurs don't have the same infrastructure as they do, but they still have the same goals. They need to be visible, they need to increase their business, and they need to communicate to their audience and be seen as an authority.
So how do you build your infrastructure to help you become efficient so you can focus on your superpower and not get bogged down by all the stuff that is kind of the minutia of the business that's required for it to run smoothly? Right.
So a couple of choices. Most people have, either assistants or extended teams that come from other providers or other vendors that can provide either communication services to you, virtual assistant services to you, or even marketing services to you. So that's a choice. Or you can have a small team, right? I have a small team, and I also have a host of different providers that provide me the exact things that I need. And I've just chosen that choice, though, right? In the early days, I decided that I did not want to build another organization of 50 or 100 people, because in the end, you end up managing people more than managing the business. So I've decided to build a business where I have, as you said, to do my craft and then have other people just do the other things that are required to make a business run.
Now, what's more rewarding for you these days? Is it having one of your clients get promoted, or was it when you got promoted back in the day?
No, I tell you what, seeing my clients getting promoted is great. I had a lady that was in a large airline or aircraft company here in the U.S. We won't mention names, based in Seattle here. And she was telling me how, because of the class that she took and the technique she did in those 5 situations. So we said, there are only 5 situations that people see you or hear you, right? It's the one-on-one meeting that the leaders have with you. It's the team meeting is either the small team or the large, all hands or town halls, the conference call, the business presentation, or the company social. So those are the only 5 situations, right? And she did the many of the techniques that we did. She got visible and she got promoted, and I'm really proud of her though.
Now, we talked a little bit about this. So there's the opportunity to shine during those 5 opportunities, or being strategic at a meeting with your boss's boss. How do you recommend kind of the follow-up after one of those incidences occur?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things, right? In the book, we call it creating green X's. So a green X is something memorable that you do that people remember you by. One of the things that usually happens at a meeting, a couple of things, right? So depending what type of meeting, usually the boss goes, any volunteers to help me on this team? Most people duck their heads and scatter out of the meeting because nobody wants to do extra work. So a possibility is putting your hands up and being part of a committee, or putting your hands up and saying, hey, Lee, I heard you mention that at the talk. I don't mind pulling a team together and doing a little bit of research for that for you. So that's one thing. Sometimes just sending an email and thanking the person about, what they said is another thing. How many people do that? They don't, though. I'm telling you.
How many? Like, you were an executive. Tell me, how many people sent you a thank you?
I can count on one hand, through all the years I've been there, right?
That's shocking, right? That's a missed opportunity.
So I'll give you an example, Lee. So I don't teach people anything. I don't do myself, or I don't suggest myself. So my youngest daughter was in her first job, right? And this was last year. And she's over dinner, she was saying, hey, Dad, my CEO just got promoted, just got an award. He's one of the 5 CEOs in the United States that got this award. I go, wow, that's great. Why don't you send him an email? He says, no, I can't do that. I just joined the company for 3 weeks. I said, no, you can do that. So, of course, Dad forced you bring your phone out and type the email. It says, Mr. So-and-so, I just saw you won this award. I'm really proud to be a new employee. Great job. Something like that, right? Just one line, though. And send the email. She was hesitant as hell. Then when she pressed send, then we stopped my bickering. 2 hours later, she came down. She said, Dad, he replied to me, though, right? This is a simple thing. But most people think, because the CEO is a human being as well, right?
Right.
People want to get noticed. Even they say, hey, great interview. I mean, it can be 5 words, for heaven's sake. A great interview. I'm so proud, right? To be on the team or be on the organization. People don't realize those things. I have one more story to tell. Can I tell one more story? Though?
Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody who did that. So I was doing a talk in one of the top insurance companies in the U.S. and on the East Coast, right? And I was speaking to a group of 200 interns in that particular year, that summer. So 200 interns, again, I'm doing my spiel, how to, win in the work world, how to stand out, yada, yada. And then right at the end, after that, to your point, one intern, 1 out of 200, wrote me a letter. Now, she didn't send me an email. She wrote me a letter, though. And in the letter, she essentially rearticulated most of my key lines that I said to her in the letter, which means she showed me that she was listening to me, right? And like I tell people, if you repeat what your boss or your boss's boss says and give it back to them, they think you're brilliant. Let me repeat that in case your listeners missed that. When you repeat what your boss or your boss's boss says to you back to them, they think you're brilliant. And for me, here was this young lady who wrote a letter, sent it to me, and said what she took away from that talk. Guess out of the 200 interns that year, that company hired 16. Do you think she was one of the 16, Lee?
I'd bet on her.
Exactly. She was one of the 16. And I'm sure she figured out the rules of the game and going to get far ahead in that company.
Yeah, and I can kind of affirm that same thing has happened. I can't tell you how many young people I said, look, I'm available. You want to learn how to do this? I've been doing this a long time. I've interviewed thousands of executives. I know how to do this. I've been doing it for years. If you want to learn more and, firsthand see how this works, I'm happy to do it. And like you said, it's a handful of people that really take you up on that. And the ones that do, they win, they benefit.
Exactly. It really is funny because sometimes it's not only the young ones, sometimes people who are mid-career and who are deemingly stuck also couldn't figure that out because they don't do the things that get themselves noticed. And I had the same experience when I was writing my book called You're Hired, Not What You Do. That was targeted at the college market, right? So I was interviewing the CFO for Levi's. And I asked him, I said, do you guys have interns? He says, yep, I usually hire about 8 interns every summer. I said, oh, wow, great. Did any one of these interns just stand out to you and did anything different? He said, yeah, out of the 8, only 1 intern bothered to come to my assistant, booked some time with me, half an hour interview. She came in, she asked me 1 question, and I talked for 29 minutes, right?
Right.
So, and then she said, did you hire any of those interns? Yeah, we hired 2. Was she one of them? Yep, she was the only one I met. So it's like you knock yourself in the head. You go, for heaven's sakes, people, right?
It's right in front of you. It literally is in front of you. And it's free. It doesn't require anything other than having kind of the guts to just ask and interact with something. Be a little proactive, and it's amazing what's available.
Exactly. I mean, it's like we said just now, right, Lee? It's simple, but simple is not easy for some people for some reason or the other. So, but to get ahead and win in the work world, there are many simple but practical things you need to do. Just do them. How about that, right?
Well, if somebody wants to get a hold of your books or work with you directly, what is the website to connect with you?
Wow, sounds familiar. Go to winningintheworkworld.com. That's the easiest one that you can get to get there. And the book is called The 5% Zone. Visibility strategies that get you recognized and rewarded in any organization, and you can get that on Amazon. So there's the 5% Zone. Sometimes type in my name, Stephen Krempl, and it'll pop up.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Lee, thank you so much for having me.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Coach the Coach Radio.